The cold bit through everything. That was the first thing I understood when I woke on the 7th of December 1941 in a dugout on the northern edge of Klin. Not the sound of the barrage that had started before dawn, not the runner stumbling down into our hole with ice crusted in his beard, not even Feldwebel Ernst shouting orders I could barely hear through the explosions. Just the cold. It was in my bones, in my lungs, in the marrow of my teeth. Someone said later it was 40 degrees below freezing, but numbers meant nothing by then. Cold was cold, and it wanted to kill you as surely as the Russians did. I had been trying to sleep when the shelling started. Not real sleep. The kind where you never quite go under, where every sound jerks you back and your muscles stay coiled waiting. The stove in the corner had died during the night. Kurt was supposed to keep it fed, but Kurt had been on guard duty, and anyway, we were down to burning furniture stripped from houses in town. The wood was damp, everything was damp. Even frozen solid, there was moisture working its way into your clothes, your boots, into places inside you that should have stayed dry. The barrage was katyushas. I knew that sound, everyone did. Like someone tearing the sky apart with their bare hands, long wailing screams that made your back teeth ache even before the impacts started walking toward our position. I lay there wrapped in my greatcoat and a Soviet blanket I had taken from a corpse 3 weeks earlier, and I could not make myself move. My muscles would not obey. The cold had gotten into them, turned them into something that was not quite flesh anymore. Ernst kicked the doorframe. Snow and frozen dirt showered down on my face. He was shouting names. Mine came third or fourth. I could see his mouth moving, but the words were mush, blurred by the continuous thunder of shells landing and something wrong with my hearing from too many near misses. He kicked the frame again. More dirt fell. I tasted it. Earth and ice and something metallic that might have been blood or might have just been the taste of fear. They say fear has a taste. After Klin, I believed them. I forced myself up. My shoulder screamed. I had wrenched it badly 2 days earlier when a wall collapsed and I still could not lift my left arm above my waist. The medic had given me 2 pills from his dwindling supply and told me it was not dislocated, just badly bruised. The pills had done nothing. The pain was always there now, a dull throb that sharpened to agony whenever I moved wrong. Outside was madness. The dawn was grey and sick, lit by orange flashes marching through the village like footsteps of some enormous creature. Snow fell horizontally, driven by wind that felt like it wanted to strip the flesh from your bones. I wrapped my scarf around my face until only my eyes showed. My breath froze in the wool instantly, and I could feel ice crystals scraping my chin raw with every movement. Ernst grabbed my arm, the bad one, and pain exploded through my shoulder so intense my vision went white for a moment. He was saying something about assembly point, something about the third house, something about moving fast before the Russians adjusted their fire. But the words came in pieces, between explosions, and I caught maybe every third one. I just nodded and followed him into the storm of steel and snow. Helmut appeared from somewhere. He was from Hamburg, had worked with ships before the war, something technical with engines that I never quite understood. His face was grey in the dim light, grey like everything else in this place. He asked me something. I could not hear. He asked again, louder this time, leaning close so his mouth was near my ear. I still could not make out the words. The ringing in my ears had gotten worse over the past week. He gave up and we stumbled after Ernst through snow that came up to our knees. The street was not a street anymore, just craters and rubble and dark shapes half buried in white. Some of the shapes moved when we passed. One called out, a German voice, but I could not tell what he was saying. We kept walking. You learn not to stop. If you stop for everyone who calls out, you never get anywhere, and then you become one of the shapes yourself, calling out to men who will not stop for you. A building came apart ahead of us. Not exploded exactly. It came apart like someone had carefully taken it to pieces. The walls folded down like a house of cards, and the roof lifted straight up and hung there for a moment, impossibly suspended, before crashing down in a wave of debris that rolled over us like water. The blast picked me up and threw me sideways into what remained of a wall. My vision went white again. When it came back, I was on my hands and knees in the snow, and my mouth was full of dust and plaster, and my shoulder felt like someone had driven a railroad spike through it. Helmut pulled me up. His face was bleeding from a dozen small cuts, but he did not seem to notice or care. We staggered forward together. The assembly point turned out to be a house with 3 walls still standing. The 4th was missing, and you could see straight through to the back room where someone had set up a machine gun position. The crew was dead, frozen in place. The gunner still gripping the weapon with hands that had turned to claws, his loader beside him with an ammunition belt half fed into the receiver. Someone had covered them with canvas, but the wind had torn it away during the night. Inside, there were maybe 20 men huddled together for warmth that did not exist. Some faces I knew, most I did not. My company had scattered during the night fighting 2 days ago. Everyone's company had scattered. That is what happened when you got shelled like this. Units broke apart like glass dropped on concrete, and the pieces went everywhere, and you could not put them back together. An oberst whose name I never learned was trying to organize us into squads using a map that no longer matched reality. Half the landmarks on it had been blown up or burned down or simply disappeared. He kept pointing at the map and talking about objectives and securing approaches, but none of it connected to anything real anymore. The taste in my mouth would not go away. Dust and metal and something burnt, like licking the inside of a stove. My shoulder throbbed with every heartbeat. I tried to roll it experimentally, and pain lanced down my arm all the way to my fingertips. My hand went numb. I flexed my fingers inside my glove until feeling came back. Pins and needles, sharp and unpleasant, but better than nothing. Someone said the Russians were coming from the north. Someone else said northwest. A lieutenant I did not recognize said he had seen tanks. How many, the oberst wanted to know. The lieutenant did not know. More than 5, maybe 10, maybe more. What kind of tanks? He did not know that either. Big ones, just big ones. Tanks were tanks when they were trying to kill you. We ate while we waited. I had half a loaf of black bread frozen so hard I had to saw at it with my bayonet. I got a chunk loose and put it in my mouth, but I could not chew it. Like trying to chew concrete, I held it in my cheek and let my body heat work on it. 10 minutes, 15. When I could finally chew, the bread tasted of nothing. Just mass, just something to fill the void in your stomach. My stomach cramped immediately, sharp and urgent, but I forced the bread to stay down. I needed the calories more than I needed comfort. The barrage stopped. The silence after was worse. Your ears kept waiting for the next shell. Every few seconds I would tense, expecting impact, and when nothing came, the tension just stayed there, coiled in my shoulders and neck. My teeth ached from clenching my jaw. Then we heard engines, low rumbling from somewhere north, multiple engines, many. The sound bounced off ruined buildings and snowdrifts, so you could not pinpoint direction. It seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. The oberst sent 2 men to scout. They ran bent double and disappeared into the ruins. They came back 5 minutes later, both running hard. Tanks, they said, to 34s, coming down the main road. How many? They did not know. A lot. More than they could count. More than we could handle. Someone brought up a puck gun. Anti-tank. The crew were Prussians or maybe Silesians, somewhere east, with accents that made them hard to understand. They set up the gun in the gap where the 4th wall used to be, angling it toward the sound of engines. The gun was a 3.7 centimeter piece. Everyone said it was useless against Russian heavies, but it was what we had. The crew moved fast. They knew their work. The crew leader, an unteroffizier with a scar running from his eye to his jaw, told us to get clear of the backblast. We pressed ourselves against the remaining walls. The first tank appeared at the end of the street. 200 meters, maybe less. It moved slowly, grinding through deep snow, its gun traversing slowly left to right. I could see the red star on its turret, sharp and bright against the green paint. Behind it came another, then another. I counted 4 before I stopped counting. The park crew waited, the scarred Unteroffizier sighting carefully, his hand on the traverse wheel, calling adjustments to his gunner. The loader had a round ready. They waited. The lead tank stopped. Its turret moved, smooth and mechanical, until the gun pointed directly at us, at me, at all of us. The muzzle looked enormous, like a tunnel, like something you could walk into. For a moment, nothing happened. Time stretched. I could hear my heart hammering, could feel it shaking my whole chest. My mouth was completely dry. I tried to swallow. Could not. There was nothing to swallow. The pack fired first. The blast in that confined space was like being hit. The shell hit the T-34 on the front glacis and ricocheted off with a bright spark and a sound like a hammer on an anvil. The tank did not even slow. Its gun fired. The world ended. I remember being lifted off my feet, flying backward, hitting something, then nothing, just grey, static, like a radio between stations. When I came back, everything was ringing and I could not breathe. Something heavy pinned me. I pushed at it. Helmut. His eyes were open, but there was nothing behind them. His face was grey, no blood that I could see. The blast had just turned him off, like throwing a switch. I pushed harder and rolled him off me. I got to my knees. The room was smoke and dust so thick I could not see 2 meters. The pack gun was gone. The crew was gone. Where they had been was just crater and pieces I did not look at closely. The opposite wall had collapsed. Through the gap I could see the street and more tanks, 6, 7, 8. Their engines were like the end of the world. Someone grabbed my arm. Ernst. His face was black with powder burns, and one eye was swollen shut. Blood ran from his nose. He pulled me toward the back of the building, toward what was left of it. Others moved in the smoke. Shadows. Ghosts. We stumbled through a doorway that had no door and into what had been a kitchen. The stove was overturned. Pots and pans scattered and frozen to the floor. A body in the corner. A woman, curled up like she was sleeping. I did not look at her face. Out the back was a courtyard. We went over a low wall, dropped into an alley. The tanks were behind us now. Their guns fired, crack, boom, methodical and patient. They were killing positions, killing men, killing everything. We ran. Running in that cold was torture. Every breath felt like inhaling broken glass. Your lungs burned, your throat burned. The air was so cold it froze moisture in your nose and mouth, and you could feel ice forming inside you, coating your airways. But you ran, because the alternative was dying, and dying seemed worse than pain. The calculation was simple. Pain or death. We chose pain. We ended up in a cellar 3 streets over. I do not remember the journey. One moment running, the next underground in the dark with someone lighting a candle stub. There were maybe 10 of us, maybe 12. The light was bad and my vision kept swimming. My shoulder felt like someone was twisting a knife in it. I could not lift my arm at all now. Ernst talked about holding until nightfall. Someone said nightfall was hours away. Another voice said the Russians would overrun everything by nightfall. They argued. Everyone had opinions. No one had orders. We had lost contact with battalion, with division, with everyone. We were alone in the dark, with Russians all around us, and no idea what to do next. I found a corner and sat. My hands were shaking. I could not make them stop. I clasped them together and squeezed until my knuckles went white, but the shaking continued. After a while it eased, but my hands still felt wrong, disconnected, like they belonged to someone else. Someone passed a flask, schnapps or vodka. I took a long pull. The alcohol burned going down, but it was good burn, warm burn. For maybe 10 seconds I felt almost human. Then the cold closed back in. The cellar smelled of earth and rot, old vegetables, mold. and underneath something sweet and sick. Bodies. Down here with us. Old ones. The Russians had been here before, or maybe they were civilians. I could not tell and did not want to know. I pulled my scarf over my nose, but the smell came through anyway. Outside, the firing continued. Tank guns, machine guns, mortars. Sometimes the cellar shook and dirt fell from the ceiling. The candle flickered but stayed lit. We sat in near darkness and listened to the battle move around us like a living thing. Sometimes close, sometimes far. No pattern, no front line, just violence happening everywhere. I must have dozed. I did not decide to sleep, but I jerked awake when someone shook my shoulder. Ernst. It was darker, but not dark enough. Still afternoon, hours until night. He said we were moving, west, toward a rally point. What rally point? He did not know. Just west, away from the Russians. We climbed out one at a time. The street was empty, snow still falling, bodies in the snow, German and Russian both. They looked the same when covered in white. Just shapes, just meat. We moved in single file, hugging buildings. My shoulder screamed with every step. I cradled my arm against my chest and tried to ignore the pain. Helmut was dead. That kept coming back, his empty eyes, the grey face. We had talked about Hamburg that morning, about the harbour, about his plans after the war. Now he was nothing, just another shape in the snow. A machine gun opened up ahead. We hit the ground. The snow burned my face. The cold soaked through my uniform instantly. The firing continued for 30 seconds, then stopped. We waited longer. Nothing. Ernst signaled and we moved. The town was dying. Buildings burned despite the snow. Black smoke against grey sky. Bodies everywhere. Equipment scattered like toys. An overturned truck with wheels still spinning. A knocked-out pack gun. Shell casings by the thousands glittering in the snow. And cold. Always cold. We found men from 2nd Company in a bombed church. 20 or so, around a small fire in the nave. The fire gave almost no heat, but they clustered around it anyway. Hauptmann Vogel was in command. He said we were to hold a line on the western edge until reinforcements arrived. What reinforcements? He did not know. Just reinforcements, orders from division. We stayed in the church that night. Outside, the fighting continued, but farther away. The Russians were consolidating, that is what someone said. Getting ready for another push. Vogel sent sentries. I was too hurt to walk, so I stayed by the fire. The warmth did not reach me. The cold had gone too deep. It was in my bones now, in my blood. No fire would get it out. I ate more frozen bread. My stomach cramped, but I kept it down. A medic looked at my shoulder. He prodded it and I nearly passed out. Not dislocated, he said, just badly bruised. He gave me 2 tablets, take them dry. I put them on my tongue and let them dissolve, bitter, chalky. After a while, the pain eased slightly but did not leave. That night I did not sleep. I sat against a pillar and watched the fire burn down and listened to men breathe. Some snored, some talked in their sleep. Words I could not quite make out. Broken sentences about home, maybe, about mothers or wives or children left behind. One man wept quietly. We all pretended not to hear. There was nothing we could say that would help, nothing that would change anything. So we just looked away and let him have his grief in private. The cold worked its way into everything, through the walls, through the floor, through your clothes, no matter how many layers you wore. I had on my undershirt, my uniform shirt, my tunic, my greatcoat, and the Soviet blanket wrapped around my shoulders. Still, the cold found me. It crept up from the stone floor and down from the drafty ceiling and in through every crack and gap. My feet were worst. I could not feel them anymore. When I looked down at my boots, they seemed like they belonged to someone else, not part of me, just objects at the ends of my legs. A man named Friedrich sat next to me. I did not know him before today. He was from somewhere in Saxony, had a wife and 2 daughters. He told me this unprompted, pulling out a photograph he kept in his breast pocket. The photograph was bent and stained, but you could still make out 3 faces. A woman and two little girls, all blonde, all smiling. He stared at it for a long time, then put it carefully back in his pocket. He asked if I had family. I told him about father and the farm. He nodded, said farms were good, steady work, honest work, not like what we were doing now. What were we doing now? I wanted to ask, but I did not. We both knew the answer. We were freezing and starving and waiting to die. That was what we were doing. All the talk about defending the Reich and stopping Bolshevism and creating Lebensraum, all of that had shrunk down to this simple fact. We were cold and hungry and scared, and we just wanted to survive until tomorrow. Someone started singing, quietly, a hymn maybe, or a folk song. I could not tell. The tune was familiar, but I could not place it. A few others joined in. Their voices were rough and off-key, but they kept singing. I did not know the words, so I just listened. It was something, some small defiance against the dark and the cold and the fear. When the song ended, no one started another. The silence that followed was heavier than before. I must have dozed because I jerked awake to find Friedrich shaking my shoulder. He was pointing toward the door. I could hear voices outside, German voices but urgent, frightened. Vogel was already moving, rifle in hand. We followed. The door scraped open and 3 men stumbled in, bringing a gust of wind and snow with them. They were from 1st Battalion. Their faces were grey with cold and exhaustion. One had his hand wrapped in a bloody rag. Another was limping badly. The third kept looking over his shoulder like something was following him. They told us the Russians had broken through in the north, overrun 2 entire companies. The line was collapsing. Units were streaming back in disorder. Command had ordered a general withdrawal to Klin, but Klin was already surrounded. There was no withdrawal. There was just scattered groups trying to stay alive in the ruins while Russian tanks prowled the streets looking for targets. "Are you certain?" Vogel asked. His voice was level, but I could hear the tension underneath. The 3 men nodded. One of them, a Gefreiter with a thin face and wild eyes, said he had seen it himself. Seen Russian infantry pouring through gaps in our line. Seen tanks crushing our positions. Seen men trying to run and getting cut down. The retreat had turned into rout, every man for himself. Vogel asked about casualties. The Gefreiter laughed. It was an ugly sound. "Casualties," he said. "Everyone was a casualty, dead or soon to be. We were all trapped in this pocket with Russians squeezing from every side. The only question was whether we froze first or got shot first." Vogel told him to get warm and rest, told all 3 of them. They shuffled to the fire and held out their hands to the dying flames. The one with the injured hand unwrapped it carefully. 2 fingers were gone, just stumps now, frozen black. He stared at them like they belonged to someone else. A medic came over with the medical kit, but there was nothing to do. The fingers were dead, gone. The medic wrapped them again and moved on. After that, no one slept. We just sat and waited for dawn. The 3 new men told us more about the fighting to the north, about how the Russian artillery had started at 0400 and gone on for 2 hours, how the barrage had simply erased entire positions, how when the artillery stopped, the tanks came, to 34s and KVs, dozens of them, with infantry following, how our park guns had fired until they ran out of ammunition and then the crews had been overrun, how the Russians were using flamethrowers, burning men out of bunkers and cellars and anywhere they tried to hide. I listened and tried not to picture it, tried not to imagine being burned alive. But the images came anyway. I pushed them away. Thinking about what might happen did not help. You had to stay focused on now, on this moment, on staying warm and staying alive for the next hour. That was all you could control. The fire finally died completely. We could not restart it. The wood was too wet and we had no dry kindling. So we sat in the dark and shivered and waited. Time crawled. Minutes felt like hours. I kept checking my watch, but the hands barely moved. I wound it twice to make sure it was still working. It was. Time really was moving that slowly. Someone had bread, just a small piece, but he broke it into crumbs and passed it around. I got maybe 5 or 6 crumbs, each one about the size of a pea. I put them in my mouth one at a time and let them dissolve on my tongue. The taste was faint, barely there, but it was something, some reminder that food existed, that eating was possible, that this hunger would not last forever, even if it felt like it would. Dawn came slowly, grey light filtering through cracks in the walls, no sun, just grey. I stood and my legs almost gave out. They had gone numb from sitting so long. I stamped my feet and pain shot through them. Good pain. Pain meant feeling, meant they were not frozen beyond recovery. I stamped again and again until circulation returned. Vogel gathered us together. He had received new orders from Runner. We were to move to divisional headquarters in the bunker system near the rail station. All scattered units were to consolidate there. Division was planning a coordinated defense, and then, when possible, a breakout attempt. We would need every man. We filed out into the morning. The snow had stopped, but the wind had picked up. It cut through clothing like knives. My face went numb almost immediately. I pulled my scarf up higher, but it did not help much. The wind found every gap. The streets were a nightmare. Bodies everywhere now, German and Russian mixed together, some frozen in strange positions, arms reaching up, faces twisted. One man had died on his knees with his hands clasped as if praying. The snow had covered him partially, so he looked like a statue, a monument to something meaningless. We saw evidence of the fighting from the night before. Entire buildings reduced to rubble, tanks destroyed. One T-34 sat abandoned in the middle of a square, its turret blown clean off. The interior was burned black. I did not look inside. I knew what I would see. A German half-track blocked our path. It had hit a mine or taken a direct hit. The front was crumpled and the driver was still in his seat, frozen solid, hands still gripping the wheel. We went around it. Behind it were bodies. 6 or 7 soldiers who had been in the back. They had died when the vehicle exploded. Most were in pieces. I stepped carefully, trying not to look down, trying not to see the details. But you saw them anyway. Your eyes found them whether you wanted to or not. We passed a cellar where civilians had taken shelter. The entrance had collapsed. You could see hands sticking out of the rubble. Small hands, children's hands. We did not stop. There was nothing we could do. The living needed our help more than the dead. The bunker system was chaos. Hundreds of men crammed into tunnels and rooms meant for far fewer. The air was thick and foul, too many bodies in too small a space. The smell was overwhelming. Sweat and unwashed flesh and fear and something worse underneath. Gangrene maybe, or frostbite turning to rot. Men with blackened hands and feet sitting against walls waiting for medics who never came. Men with bandages soaked through with blood. Men with vacant stares who had seen too much and stopped seeing anything. We found a spot in a corner of what had been a storage room, crates and boxes stacked against walls. We sat on the floor with our backs against the crates and waited. For what, I was not sure. Orders, food, ammunition, death. Something. An hour passed, maybe 2. It was hard to tell underground with no windows and nothing to mark time except your own heartbeat. My shoulder throbbed steadily. I tried not to move it. Movement made it worse. But sitting still was agony too. There was no comfortable position, no way to escape the pain. I just had to endure it. A Feldwebel came through handing out ammunition. 5 rounds per man, that was all. 5 rounds. I loaded them into my rifle and felt the weight increase slightly. 5 rounds between me and helplessness. 5 chances to kill before I became useless. I wondered how long 5 rounds would last in combat. Minutes, probably, maybe less. They also passed out ration cards. Not rations, cards. We were to present them at the supply point and receive our allocation. What allocation? Someone asked. The Feldwebel did not know. Whatever was available. We waited another hour before someone led us to the supply point. The supply point was a room with 3 men behind a table and boxes stacked behind them. The boxes were mostly empty. We filed past one at a time and showed our cards. I got a chunk of black bread the size of my fist and a small tin of meat. The bread was frozen. The tin was unlabeled. I put both in my pack and moved on. Back in our corner, I opened the tin with my bayonet. Inside was some kind of paste, pink and fatty. I sniffed it, smelled like pork, or maybe horse meat. I could not tell. I scooped some out with my finger and put it in my mouth. It was salty and greasy and revolting. I ate it all anyway. My stomach cramped immediately, but I kept it down. I needed the calories. The bread I saved for later. It was too frozen to eat now. I put it inside my tunic against my chest. My body heat would soften it eventually. Maybe in an hour or two I could gnaw off pieces. Otto appeared from somewhere. I had not seen him since the church. He looked worse. His face was grey and drawn. His eyes were sunken, but he was alive, and that was something. He sat next to me, and we did not speak. What was there to say? We were both still here, both still breathing. That said everything. An Oberleutnant came through with map and orders. He gathered squad leaders and briefed them. I watched from distance, saw him pointing at map, saw squad leaders nodding, saw worried looks. After briefing broke up, Ernst came over. He was one of the squad leaders now, promoted by necessity, too many officers dead. Ernst told us we were moving out in 1 hour. Our sector was the southern edge, same position as before. We were to hold against any Russian probes and wait for breakout order. Could be tonight, could be tomorrow, could be never if Russians crushed us first. But those were orders. Hold the line. We moved out in small groups to avoid attracting attention. The streets were being watched by Russian snipers. We learned this when the first man in our group went down. One moment walking, next moment falling with hole in his head. No sound. Just sudden collapse. We dragged him into doorway and checked for pulse. Nothing. He was gone. We left him there and moved more carefully, staying low, using cover, watching roof lines. The position was as we had left it. House with 3 walls, bodies still in courtyard. We added our new dead to the collection, carried him out back and laid him with the others. Someone should say words, but no one did. We just left him there and went back inside. Otto and I took same firing position as before. The view had not changed. Ruined street, shell craters, abandoned equipment, snow covering everything. We settled in and waited. The afternoon was quiet, too quiet. No shelling, no small arms fire, just wind and snow and silence. The quiet was worse than fighting. Your mind filled the silence with fears. You imagined Russians gathering for massive assault. Imagined tanks forming up just beyond sight. Imagine being overrun in one swift attack before you could even fire. But nothing happened. The quiet continued. Hour after hour. Just cold and silence and fear. Midnight or later, footsteps outside. Vogel grabbed his rifle. We followed. The footsteps stopped. A voice. German. Password. Vogel gave countersign. The door opened. 3 men stumbled in. 1st Battalion. The Russians had broken through in the north. The line was gone. Everything gone. They had been ordered to fall back to Klin, but Klin was surrounded. We were all surrounded. Are you sure? Vogel asked. They were sure. Russian infantry and tanks everywhere. The only way out was south toward Nekrasino, but that road was probably cut too. We were trapped. No one spoke after that. We sat in the dark and waited for morning. When dawn came grey and bitter, the fire was dead, and we could not restart it. Everything too wet, too frozen. My hands were numb despite gloves. I balled them into fists and flexed until feeling returned as pain. Sharp needles in every finger. Vogel said we were moving to division headquarters, orders by Runner. We were to consolidate and prepare for counterattack. Someone laughed. Counterattack with what? We had 40 men and 30 working rifles and almost no ammunition. Vogel said those were orders. We moved out. Streets were worse. Overnight the cold had deepened. My breath came out in clouds that froze and fell, tinkling to the ground. Every sound amplified. Boots crunching, breathing rasping, equipment clinking. I felt naked, exposed. Headquarters was in a concrete bunker near the rail station. Concrete was good. It stopped shells. Inside was warmer by 5 degrees, enough to matter. 200 men crammed into space for 50. It smelled of sweat and oil and fear. Fear has a smell. Sharp, acrid, like electricity before a storm. An Oberleutnant briefed us. Russians had us surrounded. 3 armies, 30th and 1st Shock Army and others. They were squeezing the pocket. Our mission was to hold while artillery and supply columns escaped. After that, we would attempt breakout south. When, someone asked, the Oberleutnant did not know. Soon, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow, Higher was working on it. Meanwhile, hold positions and conserve ammunition, especially ammunition. Supply was critical. Fire only with clear targets. Make every shot count. They divided us into Kampfgruppen, battle groups, not by unit but by who was present. I ended up in a group of 30 under Lieutenant Dieter. Dieter was young, 22 maybe. Soft face, scared eyes. But his voice stayed steady when he spoke. Our position was houses on the southern edge, more rubble than houses. We spread out, 2 or 3 per building. I got paired with Otto from München. Otto was older, 30, grey in his beard, baker before the war. He told me this while we dug out a firing position in what had been a bedroom. The wall mostly gone, part of floor remained. We could see the street below. Russians came at midday. We heard engines, that familiar rumble. Otto tensed. He worked his rifle bolt. Round chambered. I checked mine. Car 98, 7.92 millimeter, 5 rounds in magazine, 20 more in my pouches. Make them count. First Russians appeared at street end. Infantry, lots, loose skirmish line, using rubble for cover. Behind them a tank, KV-1, bigger than T-34, heavier. Our 3.7 would bounce off it like nothing. Otto fired first, crack. 1 Russian went down, others scattered, more firing from our positions. Russians returned fire, bullets chipped bricks around us. Dust fell. I sighted on a Russian moving between buildings and squeezed. Rifle kicked. Russian kept moving, missed. Tank fired, shell hit building 2 doors down. Whole structure collapsed inward. Screams, German voices. I tried not to think about who. I worked bolt. Brass ejected, loaded another round, found another target, Russian officer by his posture. I led him, squeezed. This time he went down. Firefight went on 20 minutes, back and forth. We fire, they fire, tank fires, buildings collapse, men scream. Noise was continuous, solid wall of sound pressing on your ears. And underneath, always the cold. Then Russians pulled back. Just stopped and withdrew. We watched them go, not believing. Why pull back? They outnumbered us. They had tanks. They could have overrun us, but they just pulled back and disappeared. Otto lowered his rifle, his hands shaking. Mine too. We looked at each other, did not speak. What was there to say? We had survived another hour. That was all. Runner from command. Russians were probing, testing for weak spots. They would be back with more tanks, hold positions, await orders. Then he was gone. Afternoon stretched forever. Cold got worse. My feet lost feeling. I stamped them, but nothing happened, just numb stumps. Otto suggested we trade off, one watching while other tried to restore circulation. I went first, pulled off boots. Feet were white, bloodless. I rubbed them, but my hands had no warmth. Put boots back on and hoped. That night it snowed again. Heavy flakes falling straight down. By morning there would be another foot. We could barely move. Snow was waist deep in places, deeper in drifts, and still it got colder. Someone said 50 degrees below. I did not believe it. 50 below was death, pure death, but we were not dead. Not yet. Time stopped making sense after that. Days blurred. You woke if you slept and it was same cold, same grey, same fear. Russians attacked. We fought them off. They withdrew. We waited for next attack, pattern repeating. Food ran out. We had eaten last iron rations 2 days ago. No resupply. Some men had hardtack, others nothing. I had nothing. My stomach was constant pain. Hunger and cold and fear twisted together until you could not tell them apart. A horse died in the street. I do not know where it came from or what killed it. It just appeared one morning, lying in snow, already freezing. Within an hour, men were cutting pieces, raw frozen meat, hacked off with bayonets. Otto and I got a chunk from the haunch. We tried to build fire, but wood would not light. So we ate it raw, could not chew it, just cut chunks small enough to swallow and force them down. Tasted of nothing. Blood, maybe. Metal. But something in stomach was enough. Later I vomited it back up. My body could not handle it. Raw, frozen horse. I knelt in snow and retched until nothing left, then dry heaved for 5 more minutes. When done, I was shaking so badly I could not stand. Otto had to help me back. Attacks came more frequently after that. Twice a day sometimes, always same pattern. Russian infantry with tank support. They would probe one sector, get thrown back, pull back and try another sector. They were methodical, patient. They had all the time in the world. We did not. Each attack was terror and chaos and noise. Machine guns chattering, tank cannons booming, men screaming, buildings collapsing. And you in the middle of it trying to stay alive, trying to make your ammunition last, trying not to freeze when you went still between volleys. One attack came in the afternoon of the 10th or maybe 11th day. I had lost track. Time had stopped meaning anything. There was just now and before and maybe later if you were lucky. The Russians came from the east this time. Different direction. That meant they were feeling out our entire perimeter, looking for the weak spot they could exploit. We heard them before we saw them. That sound of tracks clanking over rubble, the rumble of diesel engines. T-34s this time, 3 of them, with maybe 50 infantry following. They came down what had been a main street, using rubble for cover, moving building to building. We had a machine gun team in the next position over, 2 men from somewhere in Prussia. They had an MG-34 set up behind a pile of bricks. When the Russians were maybe 100 meters out, they opened fire. The sound was tremendous. Long bursts that made your ears ring even from distance. Tracers arced out and hit the infantry. Men went down, others scattered. The lead tank fired. The shell hit the position where the machine gun was. Direct hit, the explosion was huge. When smoke cleared, the position was gone, just crater. The machine gunners were gone too, pieces of them scattered across the snow. I saw an arm lying 20 meters away, still in its sleeve, hands still gripping something I could not identify. Otto and I opened fire. My rifle kicked against my shoulder. Pain shot through my bad shoulder, but I ignored it, worked the bolt, fired again. Beside me, Otto was firing steadily, mechanically, like he had become part of the rifle. Load and fire, load and fire. His face was blank, no expression, like he had gone somewhere else in his head. More firing from our positions. The Russians pulled back, disappeared into ruins. The tanks kept coming. They fired as they advanced, methodically destroying buildings, one by one, working their way toward us. Then something hit the lead tank. I did not see what. Maybe a pack gun from another position, maybe a mine. But the tank stopped. Black smoke poured from its engine compartment. The hatches flew open and crew bailed out. We shot 2 of them before they reached cover. The other 3 disappeared into rubble. The 2 remaining tanks stopped, reversed, pulled back out of range. Without the lead tank, they were cautious. They sat there, perhaps 200 meters away, waiting, watching. We waited too. Standoff. After maybe 20 minutes, they withdrew completely. We watched them go, listened to engine sound, fade, then silence again. That terrible silence that was worse than combat. Ernst came around checking casualties. We had lost 4 men in our sector, plus the 2 machine gunners, 6 total. For what? The Russians would just come back tomorrow, or tonight, or whenever they felt like it. We could not stop them, just slow them down, make them pay for every meter, but eventually they would overrun us. We all knew it. Ammunition was critically low now. I had 3 rounds left. Otto had 2, others had similar. Ernst tried to redistribute, but there was nothing to redistribute. Everyone was nearly empty. He told us to hold fire unless targets were certain. Do not waste shots, make every bullet count. We nodded. What else could we do? That night the cold got worse. I did not think it was possible, but it did. The wind picked up and drove snow sideways. Visibility dropped to almost nothing. You could barely see 5 meters. And the cold. The cold was beyond anything I had experienced. It stopped being sensation. It became presence, entity, thing with weight and substance. It pressed down on you, squeezed you, tried to crush you into nothing. My feet were completely numb now, had been for days. When I took off my boots to check them, they were white and waxy, dead white. The flesh had no give. When I pressed it, nothing happened. No color change, no resilience, just hard white flesh like candle wax. I knew what that meant. Frostbite, severe frostbite. I would lose toes at minimum, maybe the whole foot if gangrene set in. I put boots back on and tried not to think about it. Losing toes was problem for later, if there was later. Right now, I needed feet to walk, to run, to escape when breakout came. Frozen feet were better than no feet. I would deal with consequences after. Otto was in bad shape too. He had developed a cough, deep and wet. It rattled in his chest. He tried to suppress it, but that just made it worse. When he finally let it out, it doubled him over. He coughed until he vomited. Nothing came up. Just bile, yellow and thin. He wiped his mouth and sat back against wall, said he was fine, just a cold, just the weather. But I knew better. That cough was pneumonia, or something worse. In this cold with no medicine and no warmth and barely any food, pneumonia was death sentence. I gave him my blanket. He tried to refuse, but I insisted. I told him I had my coat, I would be fine. He took it finally, wrapped it around himself, but even through the blanket I could see him shivering, deep shakes that rattled his whole body. We sat in the dark and listened to wind howl. Somewhere in the ruins we heard shooting, distant. Just a few shots, then silence. Someone finding Russians, or Russians finding someone, then nothing again. The dark swallowed everything. A man named Werner came into our position. He was from different company, had gotten separated during previous attack. He asked if he could stay with us. We said yes. Room was tight, but we made space. He sat down and pulled out piece of bread, offered to share. We took small pieces. The bread was rock hard, but we gnawed at it. Took maybe 10 minutes to eat piece the size of your thumb. Werner told us about his company, how they had been overrun 2 nights ago, how he had played dead under pile of bodies while Russians went through position shooting survivors, how he had lain there for 6 hours, not moving, barely breathing, listening to Russians laugh and talk, listening to wounded men beg for mercy and get shot instead. How, when Russians finally left, he had crawled out from under the bodies and run. He told us this in flat voice, no emotion, like he was describing weather. His eyes were empty. He had seen too much. Something in him had broken. He was just going through motions now, waiting for end. We did not know what to say, so we said nothing, just sat with him in the dark and shared the silence. Morning came grey and bitter. Wind had died down, but temperature had dropped again. When I breathed out, my breath froze instantly. Ice crystals formed in the air and tinkled as they fell. Little sounds like wind chimes. It would have been beautiful if it was not killing us. My hands would not work right. Fingers would not bend properly. I had to force them to grip my rifle, had to concentrate on each movement. Close fingers, hold, do not let go. Simple things that used to be automatic now required thought, required effort. My body was shutting down, piece by piece, and there was nothing I could do to stop it. Food ran out completely that day, not just for us, for everyone. The supply dump had been hit during night attack, burned. Whatever was left the Russians had taken. We had nothing. Some men still had scraps, crumbs in pockets, crusts saved from days ago. But most had nothing, We were starving now, actually starving, not just hungry, actually dying from lack of food. A horse died in the street outside. I do not know where it came from. Maybe artillery unit, maybe supply column. It just appeared. Already dead, already starting to freeze. Within minutes, men were on it, cutting pieces, fighting over choice cuts. It was not pretty. Men who had been civilized a month ago were now animals, snarling over scraps of frozen horse meat. Otto and I waited until crowd thinned. Then we went out. Most of good meat was gone. We found piece from haunch, maybe half a kilo. Mostly gristle and fat, but it was something. We took it back to position and tried to make fire. We had some wood scraps, managed to get small flame going, held meat over it. The fat dripped and sizzled. Smell was incredible, made my mouth water, made my stomach cramp with need. We could not cook it properly. Fire was too small and we could not wait. We ate it half raw, still cold in the middle, still with ice crystals in the center. But it was meat, it was protein, it was life. We tore at it with our teeth, swallowed chunks barely chewed. My stomach rebelled immediately, cramped, twisted, but I held it down. Needed it too badly to lose it. Werner did not eat. He said he was not hungry. We tried to make him take some, but he refused, said he was fine, just tired, just needed to rest. He lay down and closed his eyes. We covered him with blanket and let him sleep. He was dead by evening. We did not know when exactly. Sometime during afternoon, he just stopped breathing. No struggle, no sound, just stopped. We found him when we checked on him at dusk. His skin was already cold, already stiff, frozen in place. We carried him outside and laid him with others, covered him with snow since we had nothing else. That was Werner. Came into our position stranger, left it corpse. We did not even know his full name, just Werner, just another dead man in a war full of dead men. Otto's cough got worse. He could not stop coughing. It racked him constantly, bent him double, made him gasp for breath. His face turned purple when he coughed. Veins stood out on his neck. He brought up blood, not much, just flecks, but blood nonetheless. I tried to help, but there was nothing to do. No medicine, no warmth, no food worth eating, just cold and damp and slow death. I gave him water from my canteen. He sipped it and coughed it back up. Tried again, managed to keep some down. He thanked me, said I was a good friend. Said when we got out of this, he would take me to München, show me his bakery. We would eat pretzels and drink beer and forget all this. I said that sounded good, said I would like that. But we both knew it was lie. We both knew he was dying, that München was dream, that pretzels and beer were from different world that no longer existed, maybe never existed. Maybe we had imagined it all. But we kept the pretense, kept talking about after, about what we would do, where we would go, who we would see. It gave us something, some small hope to cling to, some reason to keep trying, even if we knew it was false. The order came at dawn on 13th day. We were breaking out. Tonight, final attempt, south toward Nekrasino. Kampfgruppe would attack north as feint, draw Russian forces. Meanwhile, main body would punch through southern encirclement, make for Nekrasino where rest of division waited. After that, every man for himself, every man for his own survival. Plan was simple because complex plans were impossible. We had no supplies, no coordination, no communication, just desperation and will to live. Sometimes that was enough. Sometimes it was not. We would find out tonight. We spent day preparing. What preparation meant I was not sure. We checked what equipment we still had, cleaned weapons as best we could with frozen oil and stiff fingers, made sure we could move, made sure we could run when time came. Some men could not, too frozen, too hurt, too sick. They would stay, with volunteers who would tend them. We all knew what that meant. Russians would find them, Russians would kill them. But maybe not. Maybe they would be prisoners. Maybe they would survive. We told ourselves that, told them that, but no one believed it. Dieter briefed us at midday. He looked terrible, like he had aged 20 years, like war had hollowed him out and left just shell. But his voice was steady when he spoke. He told us our group would be part of main assault, not faint. We would move out at 2200 hours, full equipment, stay together, follow the tanks. When we hit Russian line, we were to push through, not stop, not fight unless necessary, just push through and keep moving, south, always south. He said tanks would lead. What tanks still ran? Maybe 10, maybe 15. Half the division's armor was frozen, engines seized, transmissions broken, tracks frozen to ground, but some still functioned. Those would spearhead attack, break through Russian positions. We would follow in their wake. After briefing, Otto and I sat together. Neither of us spoke. What was there to say? This was it. Last chance. We broke through or we died here. Simple equation, simple choice that was no choice at all. Otto coughed. Long, wet cough that shook his whole body. When he finished, there was blood on his lips, more than before. Fresh, bright red. He wiped it away and tried to smile. Failed, just managed weak grimace. He said he did not think he could run. Said he was too weak, too sick. Said maybe he should stay with wounded. I told him he was coming. Told him I would help him. We would get through together. He started to argue, then stopped. Just nodded. We sat in silence and watched light fade and waited for darkness. Ammunition got lower. Dieter came around collecting what we could spare, building reserve for breakout. Everyone understood, but no one wanted to give up what little they had. You felt naked without ammunition, helpless, but we handed it over. 5 rounds here, 10 there. I gave my last 2 magazines, left me with what was in rifle, 5 rounds. Dieter nodded thanks and moved on. He looked worse, thinner, older. War had aged him 10 years in 5 days. That night we heard artillery, but this was different. German artillery, our guns firing from somewhere west. Long-range fire arcing over us into Russian positions went on 30 minutes, then silence. Morning we learned artillery was covering supply drop. Junkers transports trying to land on makeshift strip west of Klin. Some made it, some did not. Enough got through with ammunition and medical supplies. Supplies never reached us. By the time unloaded and sorted, the Russians advanced and overran the dump, so we stayed hungry and cold and low on ammunition. Nothing changed. I remember little after that. Just existing, trying not to freeze, trying not to get killed. Watching sky turn grey to black to grey again. Somewhere during that, I stopped being afraid, not brave, just empty. Fear burned itself out. Otto talked about München, about his bakery, how he made pretzels before dawn and whole shops smelled of yeast and salt, how customers lined up waiting for doors to open. Simple things, normal things, things from a world that no longer existed. I told him about my father's farm, about wheat fields in summer, about wind moving through grain like water, about harvest when everyone from village came to help and afterward there was beer and dancing. Otto said that sounded nice. It was nice. It had been nice. I wondered if farm still existed, if father was still alive. I had not heard from him in 6 months. We talked to keep ourselves human, to remember we had been something other than this, other than frozen scarecrows in ruins waiting to die. The order came at dawn on the 13th. We were breaking out, tonight, south toward Necrocino. Plan was simple. Kampfgruppe would attack north as feint, draw Russian forces. Meanwhile, main body would assault south, punch through encirclement, make for Necrocino, where rest of division waited. After that, every man for himself. Simple. Except nothing was simple when surrounded by 3 Russian armies in 40 degrees below, with no food and almost no ammunition. We spent day preparing. What preparation meant, I could not say. We checked equipment, cleaned rifles as best we could with frozen oil. Waited. Dieter briefed us at noon. Our Kampfgruppe would be part of main assault, not feint. We would move out at 2200 hours. Full equipment. Wounded who could walk came with us. Wounded who could not walk stayed with volunteer medical party. No one said what would happen to those who stayed. We all knew. Otto asked about tank support. Dieter said yes. What tanks still ran, maybe 10, maybe 15. Cold had killed most. Engines frozen, transmissions seized, tracks frozen to ground. But some ran, and those would lead assault. After briefing, I found quiet corner and wrote letter to my father in my head. I had no paper. I told him I was sorry I had not written. I told him about cold and fighting and men I had met. I told him Otto made good bread. I told him I missed farm. I told him I loved him. Then I erased letter because carrying it was too heavy. Afternoon was endless. Time crawled. Every minute felt like hour. I tried to sleep but could not. I sat with back against wall and watched light fade and thought about nothing. Thinking was dangerous. If you thought too much, you realized how insane this was. How we would all die in frozen hell for nothing, so you did not think, just existed, one breath after another. At 2100 we formed up, 200 men in ragged lines. More appeared, 400, 600. By the time ready, maybe 1,000 of us. Not all First Panzer Division, men from other units, stragglers, walking wounded, anyone who could hold rifle and walk. Tanks arrived just before 2200. I counted 8. Panzer IIIs and single Panzer IV. They looked like ghosts. White camouflage, frozen exhaust trailing behind like shrouds. Engines sounded wrong, rough, labored, but running, and that mattered. At exactly 2200 the feint began. We heard it though could not see, artillery and machine guns and tank guns. The noise rolled across town like thunder. The ground shook. Snow fell from buildings. The Russians would be moving reserves north to counter the attack. That was the theory. That was the hope. Whether it would work was question no one could answer. We waited in the ruins, 200 men in our group, more in other groups. By the time we all formed up, there were maybe 1,000 of us, not all First Panzer Division, men from other units, stragglers, walking wounded, anyone who could hold weapon and walk. We were all that was left, the remnants, the survivors, the desperate. 5 minutes passed, 10. The feint attack continued. We could hear explosions, could see flashes lighting the sky to the north. Then Dieter raised his hand, dropped it. We moved. First 200 meters were almost easy. We had made paths through deep snow earlier in day. We moved in columns following the tanks, 8 Panzer IIIs and 1 Panzer IV. They looked like ghosts in the darkness, white winter camouflage. Frozen exhaust trailing behind. Their engines growled and coughed, sounded unhealthy, but they moved, and that was what mattered. We followed in their wake. The tanks broke trail through the deep snow. We walked in the compressed snow behind them. It was easier than wading through waist-deep drifts. No one spoke. The only sounds were boots crunching, breathing harsh and ragged, equipment rattling, and always the growl of tank engines ahead. I helped Otto walk. He leaned on me heavily. His breathing was labored. Each breath whistled and rattled, but he kept moving, step after step. We both knew if he fell, I could not carry him. If he fell, he would die here, so he did not fall. Somehow he kept his feet, kept moving forward. The first Russian position appeared ahead. We could not see it in the darkness, but we knew it was there. We heard voices, Russian voices, talking, laughing even. They did not know we were coming, did not know 1,000 desperate men were walking toward them through the night. The lead tank fired. The gun flash lit everything. For one instant I saw it all. Russian trenches, machine gun nests, men scrambling for weapons, buildings behind them, snow everywhere, then darkness again. The image burned into my eyes. I could still see it when there was nothing to see. The shell hit something, I do not know what. But there was explosion, screams. Then every weapon opened fire at once. The darkness exploded into light and sound and chaos. Machine guns chattering, rifles cracking, tank cannons booming, mortars falling. It was like walking into a wall of sound and metal. We charged. I do not remember deciding to charge. One moment walking, next moment running, screaming, firing rifle into the darkness. Otto beside me. Others around us. We were wave crashing into Russian line, and the noise was beyond description. Every gun firing, every man screaming, explosions everywhere, snow fountaining up, bodies falling, blood steaming in the cold. A Russian appeared in front of me. I saw his face clearly in muzzle flash, young face, scared face. I fired. He went down. I worked bolt, brass ejected, loaded last round, fired at another shape. Rifle clicked empty. I reversed it, swung the stock like club, hit something, shock ran up arms, swung again. Wood splintered but held. Then we were through, past the first line, into open ground between positions. We kept running. Behind us the fighting continued, but we were through. For now, we ran south, toward something that might be safety, toward anything that was not this. The cold was agony, but we ignored it. Adrenaline pushed us forward, fear pushed us forward, will to live pushed us forward. We ran through snow that grabbed at our legs, through darkness broken only by muzzle flashes behind us, through air so cold it burned your lungs with every breath. I do not know how long we ran. Time had no meaning. There was just running and breathing and the burning in my chest and my legs and my lungs. Otto ran beside me. I heard him gasping, heard him coughing, but he kept up. Somehow he kept up. Then machine gun fire ahead. Russians had another position, blocking our path. We went to ground. Snow so cold it burned like fire. I pressed my face into it and felt ice crystals cut my skin. The firing continued, tracers arcing over us, red lines in darkness, beautiful and deadly. A tank moved up, pushed past us, its gun traversed, fired, the position ahead exploded, the machine gun stopped, the tank fired again and again, methodically destroying the position. When it stopped firing, we got up and ran again. This happened 3 more times, Russian positions blocking our path, tanks destroying them, us running through the gaps. Each time fewer of us, each time more bodies left behind in snow. But we kept moving, kept pushing south. Then we were clear, no more Russian positions, no more firing, just open ground and darkness and snow. We kept running for another kilometer, 2. Finally someone called halt. We collapsed where we stood, gasping, shaking, alive. I looked around, counted maybe 30 men from our group. We had started with 200. The rest were dead or scattered or captured. Otto was there, still breathing, still alive, blood on his lips from coughing, but alive. I grabbed his shoulder and squeezed. He nodded, too exhausted to speak. We rested for 10 minutes. Then we moved again. Could not stay still. Russians would be following, would be trying to cut us off. We had to keep moving, had to get to Necrocino before they caught us. We walked through the night, following the dim shapes of men ahead. Sometimes we heard firing behind us, sometimes to the sides, other groups fighting their way out or being caught. We did not know, did not stop to find out, just kept walking. South, always south. Dawn found us maybe 10 kilometers from Klin, maybe 15. Distance was hard to judge. We were exhausted, frozen, half dead. But we had made it out, had broken through the encirclement, were alive when so many were not. I looked for Otto. He was sitting against a tree, his eyes were closed, his breathing was shallow. I called his name. He did not respond. I went to him, shook his shoulder. His eyes opened slowly. He looked at me, but I do not think he saw me. He said something I could not hear. I leaned closer. He repeated it, said he was cold, so cold. Said he just needed to rest, just for a minute. I told him we could not stop. Had to keep moving, had to get to Necrocino. He nodded but did not get up. I tried to pull him to his feet. He was too heavy. Dead weight. I called for help. No one came. Everyone was too tired, too focused on their own survival. I sat with him, wrapped my blanket around us both, held him and tried to share what little warmth I had. His breathing got slower, shallower. He coughed once. Blood sprayed from his lips. He tried to say something, could not get the words out. Then he stopped breathing. I sat there holding him for a long time. I do not know how long. Minutes. Hours. Eventually someone pulled me away. Said we had to move, said Russians were coming, said I had to leave him. I stood, my legs barely held me. I looked down at Otto, at his grey face, at the blood on his lips, at his closed eyes. I thought about München, about the bakery, about pretzels and beer and promises we could not keep. Then I turned and walked away. We reached Necrocino 2 days later. There was no division headquarters there, just more ruins, more snow, more nothing. The division had pulled back farther west. We would have to keep walking. So we walked. I do not remember much of those days, just walking, one foot in front of other, again and again. The cold, the hunger, the exhaustion, men falling and being left, more dying than the Russians had killed, freezing to death, starving to death, dying from wounds or sickness or just giving up. I kept walking because I did not know what else to do, because stopping meant dying, because something in me refused to quit. Not courage, not strength, just stubbornness, just animal refusal to lie down and die. We found friendly lines eventually, or they found us. A patrol picked us up, took us to field hospital, gave us soup and bread and blankets. They looked at my feet, said I would lose 4 toes, maybe 5, said I was lucky it was not the whole foot, said frostbite was miracle I could still walk. They asked about my unit, about what happened at Klin. I told them, some of it, not all. Could not tell all, could not explain what it had been like. The cold, the fear, the dying, the friends lost. Words were inadequate, would always be inadequate. They wrote it down in report, facts, numbers, dates. It looked nothing like what I had lived. They asked if I wanted to add anything. I said no, there was nothing to add, nothing that words could capture. I was sent west, to recovery station, then farther west to hospital. They operated on my feet, removed 6 toes total, 3 from left foot, 3 from right. The pain was enormous, but I was alive, still breathing, still existing. That was something. I spent 6 weeks in hospital, learning to walk again, learning to live with missing toes, learning to balance differently. It was hard, but I managed. The body adapts, has to adapt, or you die. So I adapted. They sent me back to my unit eventually. First Panzer Division had been reformed, new men, new equipment, same war. We were sent back to the line, back to fighting, back to cold and death and everything I thought I had left behind at Klin. But I had not left it behind. I carried it with me, still carry it. In my feet where toes used to be, in my shoulder that never quite healed right, in my dreams where I see Otto's grey face, where I see Helmut's empty eyes, where I see 1,000 dead men in the snow at Klin. I survived the war. That is obvious since I'm telling this now, but in December 1941, in the frozen ruins of Klin, survival seemed impossible. Yet some of us survived, enough of us. First Panzer Division was reformed. New men arrived to replace the dead. The war continued. Moscow was never taken. The great offensive of 1941 failed, and we pulled back kilometer by kilometer through that terrible winter and into spring. But those battles are not this story. This story is Klin. 9 days in December. 9 days that taught me what war truly is. Not glory, not honor, not any of the words they used to send us there, just cold and hunger and fear and men dying in snow. I think about Otto sometimes, about his bakery in München that I never saw, about pretzels I never tasted, about promises we could not keep. I think about Helmut with his empty eyes, about Werner who died without struggle, about Friedrich and his photograph, about all the men whose names I never knew, about thousands who died at Klin. Years later, someone asked me what it was like. I could not answer. How do you explain cold so intense it stops being sensation and becomes presence? How do you explain watching men you knew become shapes in snow? How do you explain surviving when so many did not? You cannot. Words fail. They always fail. But I remember the sound snow made when it fell. That tiny whisper. I remember taste of frozen horse meat. I remember Otto's face when he talked about his bakery. I remember weight of my rifle. I remember the cold. Most of all, I remember the cold. It never left me. Not really. The cold from Klin. The cold that killed more men than bullets. The cold that showed me what we really were. Not soldiers, not heroes. Just men trying not to die. Just men trying to survive one more hour in frozen hell. That is what Klin was. That is what Klin will always be. Only the snow falling in darkness, whispering its secrets to no one. 2 days later, I sat in bunker near village, whose name I never learned, and ate potato soup from canteen that was not mine. Soup was thin and cold, but it was first hot food in 9 days. I could feel it going down, could feel warmth spreading through chest. Most wonderful sensation ever. 12 of us in bunker, survivors from dozen different units. We had found each other on road and moved together because alone you died. Together, you might live. That was calculation. No one spoke about Klin. What was there to say? We had been surrounded. We fought. We broke out. Thousands had not. We had. That was all. My shoulder still hurt. Medic said nothing to do. Rest it. Impossible advice. But pain was background noise now. Just another thing to ignore, like hunger and cold and fear. Someone had cigarette, 1 cigarette among 12 men. We passed it around. Each man took drag. When it came to me, I held smoke in lungs as long as could. Nicotine hit bloodstream, and for a moment, everything felt okay. Outside it was snowing again. Had not stopped snowing in week. Whole world was white, white and grey and black. No other colors, no green, no blue, just winter colors, death colors. I thought about Otto, about his bakery in München, about pretzels made before dawn, about how he ate raw horse meat and did not complain, about how he was beside me one moment and gone next. I thought about Helmut and his empty eyes. I thought about men in church and cellar and all positions we held and abandoned. I thought about all of them, and then stopped thinking because it was too much. Someone asked where I was from. Farm in Thuringia, wheat and barley, good land. They nodded. One man was from Dresden, another from village in Bavaria, third from Köln. We were all from somewhere else, somewhere warm, somewhere not here. Soup was gone, cigarette was gone. We sat in silence and listened to wind. After a while, someone started to snore, then another. I tried to sleep but could not. Every time I closed eyes, I saw darkness exploding, muzzle flashes, men falling, snow-stained red. So I sat awake and watched candle burn down and thought about nothing. Tomorrow, we would move again. West, always west, away from Russians, away from Moscow, away from everything we tried to accomplish and failed. But that was tomorrow. Tonight, I was warm and fed and alive. For tonight, that was enough. I survived war, obvious since I am telling this now. But in December 1941, in frozen ruins of Klin, survival seemed impossible. Yet we survived. Some of us. Enough. Years later, someone asked what it was like. Encirclement, breakout, cold. I could not answer. How do you explain cold so intense it stops being sensation and becomes presence? How do you explain fear so complete it empties you out? How do you explain watching men you knew become shapes in snow? You cannot, not really. Words fail. But I remember sound snow made when it fell, that tiny whisper, like world-telling secrets. I remember taste of frozen horse meat. I remember Otto's face when he talked about bakery. I remember weight of rifle. I remember cold. Most of all, I remember cold. It never left me, not really. Even now, all these years later, when winter comes and temperature drops, I feel it. In bones, in hands, in shoulder where pain never quite went away. Cold from Klin. Cold that killed more men than bullets. Cold that taught me what war really is. Not glory, not honor, not any words they use. Just cold and hunger and fear and trying not to die. That is war. Nothing more. Nothing less. Otto did not make it. Learned that later. His body was found in snow outside Klin, buried there with thousands of others. I never saw München, never tasted his pretzels, but I remember his stories, remember his voice. And sometimes, on winter mornings, I smell yeast and salt and think of him. First Panzer Division reformed after Klin. We were sent back to line. More fighting, more cold, more dying. Moscow was never taken, great offensive failed, and we pulled back, kilometer by kilometer, all through terrible winter and into spring. But that is another story. This story ends in Klin, in snow, in cold, with 1,000 men breaking through Russian lines in darkness, running south towards something that might have been safety. Some made it, some did not. I made it, and I carried Klin with me. Carry it still. In end, that is what war gives you. Memories you cannot escape. Friends you cannot forget. Cold that never leaves bones. And knowledge that you survived when others did not, which is both blessing and curse. I think about Klin sometimes, about what we were fighting for, about whether it mattered. I have no answers. Only memories, only cold, only snow falling in darkness, whispering its secrets to no one. That was the first thing. Not the sound of the barrage that started before dawn. Not the runner who came panting into our bunker with his face already grey. Not even Feldwebel Ernst shouting something I could not quite hear over the ringing in my ears. The cold. 40 degrees below, someone said later, though I have no idea who measured it or how. Numbers meant nothing anymore. Cold was cold. Your face hurt. Your hands hurt. Everything hurt. I had been trying to sleep when it started. Not real sleep. The kind where you're never quite under, where every sound jerks you back and your body stays rigid waiting for something. The stove in the corner of the bunker had gone out sometime in the night. Kurt was supposed to keep it fed, but Kurt had drawn guard duty, and anyway we were down to burning furniture we had stripped from the houses in Klin. The wood was damp, everything was damp. Even when it froze solid, there was moisture somewhere, working its way into your clothes, your boots, your lungs. The barrage was Katyushas. I knew that sound by then. Everyone did. Like someone tearing the sky in half. Long, wailing screams that made your teeth ache even before the impact started walking toward us. I remember lying there on the frozen planks we used for beds, wrapped in my greatcoat and a Soviet blanket I had taken from a corpse 3 weeks ago, and thinking that I could not make myself move. My muscles would not obey. The cold had gotten into them, turned them to wood. Ernst kicked the doorframe. He was shouting names. Mine came third or fourth. I could see his mouth moving, but the words were mush, blurred by the ongoing explosions and something wrong with my hearing. He kicked the doorframe again and a shower of frozen dirt fell on my face. I tasted it, earth and ice and something metallic. Blood, maybe, or just the taste of fear. They say fear has a taste. I believe it. Outside was chaos. That is too simple a word for it, but I have no better one. The dawn was grey and strange, lit by the orange flashes of explosions marching through the village. Snow was falling. It had been falling for 3 days, but now it came horizontal, driven by a wind that felt like it wanted to skin you. I wrapped my scarf tighter around my face until only my eyes showed. My breath froze in the wool immediately. I could feel ice crystals scraping my chin. We were supposed to move to Assembly Point Baker. That was what Ernst was yelling. His voice came in snatches between explosions. Point Baker! Third house! Move, move, move! But I did not know where Point Baker was, and neither did anyone else. Helmut grabbed my arm. He was from Hamburg, and before the war he had been something with ships, I forget what. He asked me something I could not hear. I shook my head. He asked again. I still could not hear. The ringing in my ears was getting worse. He gave up and we just followed Ernst. The street was not a street anymore. There were craters every few meters, some still smoking, and between them the snow was churned up and filthy. Dark shapes lay in the snow. Some of them moved. One of them called out to us. I could not tell what he was saying. We kept moving. You learn not to stop. If you stop to help everyone who calls out, you never get anywhere, and then you are one of the shapes in the snow yourself. A building came apart in front of us. I do not mean it exploded, it just came apart, like someone had taken it to pieces very carefully. The walls folded down and the roof lifted up, and for a moment everything hung in the air, impossibly. And then it all came down in a grey cloud that rolled over us. The blast threw me into a wall. I hit hard enough that my vision went white, and when it came back I was on my hands and knees in the snow, and my mouth was full of dust, and there was something wrong with my shoulder. Helmut pulled me up. His face was bleeding, but he did not seem to notice. We staggered forward. Point Baker turned out to be a house that was mostly intact, which meant it still had 3 walls. The 4th wall was gone, and you could see right through to the back room where someone had set up a machine gun position. The crew was dead. They were frozen in position, the gunner still gripping the weapon, his loader beside him with a belt of ammunition half fed. Someone had covered them with a tarp, but the wind had blown it off. Inside, there were maybe 20 of us. I recognized some faces, but not all. My company was scattered. Everyone's company was scattered. That happened when you got shelled like that. Units broke apart like glass, and the pieces went everywhere. Oberst someone, I never got his name, was trying to organize us into squads. He had a map, but the map was from before, and half the landmarks on it did not exist anymore. He kept pointing and saying things like, secure the approach or hold the junction, but none of it made sense because we could not see the approach and we did not know where the junction was. The taste in my mouth would not go away. Dust and metal and something burnt. My shoulder felt wrong. Not broken, I did not think, but wrenched somehow. When I tried to roll it, pain shot down my arm and my hand went numb. I worked my fingers inside my glove until the feeling came back. It took a long time. The cold made everything slower. Someone said the Russians were coming from the north. Someone else said it was the northwest. A third man, a lieutenant I did not know, said he had seen tanks. How many tanks? The Oberst wanted to know. The lieutenant did not know. More than 5, he said. Maybe 10, maybe more. The Oberst asked what kind of tanks. The lieutenant did not know that either. They were tanks, big ones. We ate from our packs while we waited. I had half a loaf of bread, frozen so hard I had to hack at it with my bayonet. I managed to break off a chunk and put it in my mouth, but I could not chew it. It was like trying to chew a rock. I held it in my cheek and let my body heat soften it. That took perhaps 10 minutes. When I could finally chew it, the bread tasted of nothing, just bulk, just something to put in your stomach. My stomach cramped immediately, but I forced it to stay down. The barrage stopped. The silence after was worse than the noise. Your ears kept waiting for the next impact. Every few seconds I would tense, expecting it, and when it did not come, the tension would not go away. It just stayed there, coiled in your shoulders and your jaw. My teeth ached from clenching them. Then we heard the engines, low rumbling sounds from somewhere to the north, more than 1, maybe more than 10. The sound bounced off the buildings and the snow, so you could not tell where it was coming from. It seemed to come from everywhere at once. The Oberst sent 2 men to scout. They came back 5 minutes later, both running. Tanks, they said. T-34s, coming down the main road. How many? They did not know. A lot, more than a lot. Someone brought up a puck. The anti-tank gun crew were all from Prussia, I think, or somewhere east. They had accents that made them hard to understand. They set up the gun in the gap where the 4th wall used to be, pointing it north toward the sound of the engines. The crew worked fast. They knew their business. The gun was old, a 3.7 centimeter piece that everyone said was useless against the Russian heavies. But it was what we had. The crew leader, an unteroffizier with a scarred face, told us to get clear of the backblast. We pressed ourselves against the remaining walls. The first tank appeared at the end of the street, perhaps 200 meters away. It moved slowly, grinding through the snow, its gun traversing. I could see the red star on its turret. Behind it came another, then another. I stopped counting at 4. The park crew waited. The scarred Unteroffizier was sighting down the barrel, his hand on the traverse wheel. He was saying something to his loader, but I could not hear what. The lead tank stopped. Its turret moved smooth and mechanical until the gun was pointing directly at us. For a moment, nothing happened. We were frozen there, waiting, and I could feel my heart hammering in my chest so hard I thought it would burst through my ribs. My mouth was completely dry. I tried to swallow, but there was nothing to swallow. The pack fired first. The blast was enormous in that confined space. The shell hit the T-34 on the front slope and ricocheted off with a bright spark. The tank did not even pause. Its gun fired. The world came apart. I remember being lifted off my feet, flying backward, hitting something hard. Then nothing. Grey, just grey. When I came back, everything was ringing and I could not breathe. There was something heavy on top of me. I pushed at it and realized it was Helmut. He was not moving. I pushed harder and managed to roll him off. His eyes were open, but there was nothing behind them. His face was grey. There was no blood that I could see. The blast had just turned him off like a light. I got to my knees. The room was full of smoke and dust. The pack was gone. The crew was gone. Where the gun had been, there was just a crater and some pieces of things I did not look at too closely. The other wall had come down. Through the gap, I could see the street and the tanks still coming. More of them now. 5, 6. The sound of their engines was like the end of the world. Someone grabbed me. Ernst. His face was black with powder burns, and one eye was swollen shut, but he was alive. He was pulling me toward the back of the house, toward what was left of it. Others were moving too, shadows in the smoke. We stumbled through a doorway that had no door and into what had been a kitchen. The stove was knocked over, pots and pans everywhere, frozen to the floor. There was a body in the corner, a woman curled up. I did not look at her face. Out the back was a courtyard. We went over a wall, dropped into an alley. The tanks were behind us now. I could hear their guns firing, the distinctive crack boom of the 76mm. They were firing at something. Us, probably. Other positions. It did not matter. We ran. Running in that cold was agony. Every breath felt like inhaling knives. Your lungs burned, your throat burned. The air was so cold it froze the moisture in your nose and mouth, and you could feel ice forming inside you. But you ran anyway, because if you stopped, you died. That was the calculation. Pain or death. You chose pain, and you ran. We ended up in a cellar 3 streets over. I do not remember getting there. One moment we were running, and the next we were underground in the dark, and someone was lighting a candle stub. There were perhaps 10 of us, maybe 12. I could not count. The light was bad and my vision kept swimming. My shoulder was worse. The pain was sharp now, like something broken. I could not lift my arm. Ernst was saying something about holding until nightfall. Someone else said nightfall was hours away. Another voice said the Russians would overrun the whole town by nightfall. Back and forth. Everyone had an opinion. No one had orders. We had lost contact with battalion. We had lost contact with everyone. I found a corner and sat down. My hands were shaking. I could not make them stop. I clasped them together and squeezed until the shaking passed. It did not pass. I squeezed harder. My knuckles went white in the candlelight. After a while, the shaking eased, but my hands still felt wrong, disconnected from my arms. Someone passed around a flask, schnapps probably, or vodka. I took a long pull and the alcohol burned going down, but it was a good burn, a warm burn. For about 10 seconds I felt almost human. Then the cold closed back in and I was shaking again. That was when I noticed the smell. The cellar smelled of earth and old vegetables and mold, but underneath that was something else, something sweet and rotten. There were bodies down here with us, old ones. The Russians must have used this place before they pulled out, or maybe they were civilians. I could not tell, and I did not want to know. I pulled my scarf up over my nose, but the smell got through anyway. The firing outside grew more intense. Tank guns and machine guns and the crump of mortars. Sometimes the whole cellar shook and dust fell from the ceiling. The candle flickered but did not go out. We sat in the near dark and listened to the battle move around us like a living thing. Sometimes it sounded close, sometimes it moved away. There was no pattern to it, no front line anymore. Just killing happening everywhere at once. I must have slept. I do not remember deciding to sleep, but I remember jerking awake when someone shook my shoulder. Ernst again. It was darker now, but not dark enough. Still afternoon, still hours until nightfall. He said we were moving. Where? I asked. West, he said, toward the rally point. What rally point? I asked. He did not know. Just west, away from the Russians. We climbed out of the cellar one at a time. The street was empty. Snow was still falling. There were bodies in the snow, dark humps already being covered. Some of them were German, some were Russian. They looked the same when you could not see their faces. Just shapes. We moved in single file, keeping to the buildings. My shoulder screamed every time I moved wrong. I cradled my arm against my chest and tried to ignore it. Helmut was dead. That kept coming back to me. We had been talking that morning about Hamburg. He was going to take me to see the harbor when the war ended, show me the big ships. Now his eyes were empty and he was getting buried under the snow, and I would never see Hamburg. A machine gun opened up somewhere ahead. We went to ground. The snow was so cold it burned. I pressed my face into it and felt the ice crystals scratch my cheeks. The firing continued for perhaps 30 seconds. Then it stopped. We waited. Nothing. Ernst signaled, and we moved again. The town was dying. I could feel it. Buildings were burning despite the snow. Black smoke rose into the gray sky. Bodies everywhere. Equipment scattered. An overturned truck with its wheels still spinning. A park gun with a broken barrel. Shell casings by the thousands, glittering in the snow like brass confetti. And the cold. Always the cold. We found a group from 2nd Company in a bombed-out church. There were about 20 of them huddled around a fire they had built in the nave. The fire was small and gave almost no heat, but they clustered around it anyway. The Hauptmann in charge, a man named Vogel, I think, said we were supposed to hold a line along the western edge of town until reinforcements arrived. What reinforcements? Someone asked. Vogel did not know. Just reinforcements. Orders from division. We stayed in the church that night. Outside, the fighting continued, but it sounded farther away. The Russians were consolidating, someone said, getting ready to push again at dawn. Vogel sent out sentries. I was too hurt to be any use as a sentry, so I stayed by the fire and tried to get warm. It did not work. The cold had gotten too deep. It was in your bones now. No amount of fire would get it out. I ate more of the frozen bread. My stomach cramped again, but less this time. Maybe I was getting used to it. A medic looked at my shoulder. He prodded it, and I nearly blacked out from the pain. He said it was not dislocated, just badly bruised. He gave me 2 tablets from his kit and told me to take them dry. I put them on my tongue and let them dissolve. They tasted bitter. After a while, the pain eased, but it did not go away. That night I did not sleep. I sat with my back against a pillar and watched the fire burn down and listened to the men around me breathe. Some of them snored. Some talked in their sleep. One man wept quietly. No one said anything about it. We all just looked away. Sometime in the middle of the night, I heard footsteps outside. Vogel heard them too. He grabbed his rifle and moved to the door. We all followed. The footsteps stopped. A voice called out, German words, password. Vogel gave the countersign. The door opened and 3 men stumbled in. They were from 1st Battalion. They said the Russians had broken through in the north. The line was gone. Everything was gone. They had been ordered to fall back to Klin, but Klin was surrounded now. We were all surrounded. Vogel asked if they were sure. They were sure. They had seen Russian infantry and tanks all around the town. The only way out was south toward Nekrasino, but that road was probably cut too. We were trapped. All of us. The whole division. After that, no one spoke. We just sat in the dark and waited for morning. 9th of December. Morning came grey and bitter. The fire had died during the night, and we could not get it started again. Everything was too frozen. My hands were numb despite my gloves. I had to ball them into fists and flex them repeatedly just to get any sensation back. When the feeling returned, it came as pain. Sharp needles in every finger. Vogel said we were moving to divisional headquarters. He had received orders by Runner sometime before dawn. We were to consolidate with other scattered units and prepare for a counterattack. Someone laughed at that. Counterattack with what? They wanted to know. We had maybe 40 men, most of them hurt, and maybe 30 rifles that still worked. Vogel said those were the orders. We moved out. The streets were worse than before. Overnight, the cold had gotten colder. My breath came out in clouds that froze immediately into ice crystals that fell to the ground with tiny tinkling sounds. The snow crunched under our boots, loud in the dead air. Every sound seemed amplified. The crunch of our boots, the rasp of our breathing, the metallic clink of equipment. I felt exposed, naked, like we were walking across a stage with spotlights on us. We found headquarters in a concrete bunker near the railway station. Concrete was good. It kept out the shells. Inside, it was warmer by maybe 5 degrees, enough to make a difference. There were perhaps 200 men crammed into a space meant for 50. It smelled of sweat and oil and fear. The fear had a smell. I know this now. Sharp and acrid, like electricity. An Oberleutnant de Rey did not recognize briefed us. The Russians had us surrounded, he confirmed. 3 armies, the 30th and the 1st Shock Army and elements of others. They were squeezing the pocket, trying to crush us before we could break out. Our mission was to hold them off while the division artillery and supply columns got away. After that, we would attempt a breakout to the south. When, someone asked, the Oberleutnant did not know. Soon, maybe tonight, maybe tomorrow. Haier was still working out the details. In the meantime, we were to hold our positions and conserve ammunition, especially conserve ammunition. Supply was critically low. Fire only when you had a clear target. Make every shot count. They divided us into Kampfgruppen, battle groups, organized more by who was present than by any rational structure. I ended up in a group of maybe 30 men under a lieutenant named Dieter. Dieter was young, maybe 22, with a soft face that had not yet hardened. He looked scared. We all looked scared. But he kept his voice steady when he spoke, and that counted for something. Our position was a row of houses on the southern edge of town. They were more rubble than houses, but they provided cover and firing positions. We spread out 2 or 3 men per building. I was paired with a man named Otto from München. Otto was older, maybe 30, with grey already showing in his beard. He had been a baker before the war. He told me this while we were digging out a firing position in what had been a bedroom. The wall was mostly gone, but part of the floor remained. We could see down into the street. The Russians came at midday. We heard them before we saw them. Engines again, that now familiar rumble. Otto tensed beside me. He worked the bolt on his rifle, and I heard the round slide into the chamber. I checked my own rifle. Kar 98, 7.92 millimeter, 5 rounds in the magazine. I had maybe 20 more rounds in my pouches. Make them count, I thought. Make every shot count. The first Russians appeared at the end of the street. Infantry, lots of them. They moved in a loose skirmish line, spread out, using the rubble for cover. Behind them came a tank, a KV-1. I recognized the profile, bigger than the T-34. Heavier, our 3.7 would bounce off it like a toy. Otto fired first. His rifle cracked and one of the Russians went down. The others scattered looking for cover. More rifle fire from our positions. The Russians returned fire. Bullets chipped the bricks around our position. Dust fell on my head. I sighted on a Russian who was moving between two ruined buildings and squeezed the trigger. The rifle kicked. The Russian kept moving. I had missed. The tank fired. The shell hit a building 2 doors down, and the whole structure collapsed inward with a roar. Screams, German voices. I tried not to think about who was in there. I worked the bolt, ejected the brass, loaded another round, found another target. A Russian officer, identifiable by his posture more than his uniform. I led him slightly, the way they had taught us. Squeezed. This time he went down. The firefight went on for perhaps 20 minutes. Back and forth. We would fire, they would fire, the tank would fire, buildings would collapse, men would scream. The noise was continuous, a solid wall of sound that pressed against your ears, and under it all, the cold. Always the cold. Then the Russians pulled back, just stopped shooting and withdrew. We watched them go, not believing it. Why would they pull back? They had us outnumbered, they had tanks. They could have overrun our position easily, but they just pulled back and disappeared into the ruins. Otto lowered his rifle. His hands were shaking, so were mine. We looked at each other and neither of us spoke. What was there to say? We had survived another hour. That was all. Just another hour. A runner came up from command. The Russians were probing our defenses, he said, testing for weak points. They would be back, maybe with more tanks. We were to hold our positions and await further orders. Then he was gone. The afternoon stretched out. The cold got worse. My feet lost all feeling. I stamped them against the floor, but nothing happened. Just numb wood at the ends of my legs. Otto suggested we trade off, one of us keeping watch while the other tried to restore circulation. I went first. I pulled off my boots and my feet were white, bloodless. I rubbed them with my hands, but my hands had no warmth to give. I put the boots back on and hoped for the best. That night it snowed again. Heavy, fat flakes that came straight down in the still air. By morning there would be another foot of it. We could barely move now. The snow was waist deep in places, deeper where it had drifted, and still it got colder. Someone said it was 50 degrees below. I did not believe it. 50 degrees below was death, pure death. But we were not dead, not yet. 11th of December. Time stopped making sense. The days blurred together. You woke up if you slept and it was the same cold, the same grey, the same fear. The Russians attacked. We fought them off. They withdrew. We waited for the next attack. That was the pattern, over and over. Food ran out. We had eaten the last of our iron rations 2 days ago and there was no resupply. Some men still had hardtack. Others had nothing. I had nothing. My stomach was a knot of pain that never went away. Hunger and cold and fear all twisted together until you could not tell them apart. A horse died in the street outside our position. I do not know where it came from or what killed it. It just appeared one morning lying in the snow, already half frozen. Within an hour, men were cutting pieces from it, raw frozen meat that we hacked off with bayonets and knives. Otto and I got a chunk from the haunch. We tried to build a fire, but the wood would not light, so we ate it raw. You could not chew it. You just cut it into chunks small enough to swallow and forced it down. It tasted of nothing. Blood maybe, metal, but it was something in your stomach, and that was enough. Later I vomited it back up. My body could not handle it. Raw, frozen horse meat. I knelt in the snow and retched until there was nothing left, and then dry heaved for another 5 minutes. When I was done, I was shaking so badly I could not stand. Otto had to help me back to our position. The attacks came more frequently, sometimes twice a day, always the same. Russian infantry with tank support. They would probe one sector, get thrown back, pull back, and try another sector. They were methodical, patient. They had time. We did not. Our ammunition got lower. Dieter came around personally to collect whatever we could spare. He was trying to build a reserve for the breakout. Everyone understood this, but no one wanted to give up what little they had. You felt naked without ammunition, helpless. But we handed it over anyway, 5 rounds here, 10 there, every little bit. I gave him my last 2 magazines. That left me with what was in my rifle, 5 rounds. Dieter nodded his thanks and moved to the next position. He looked worse than before, thinner, older, like the war had aged him 10 years in 5 days. That night we heard artillery. But this was different. This was German artillery, our guns firing from somewhere west of town, long-range fire arcing over us into the Russian positions. It went on for perhaps 30 minutes, then silence. In the morning we learned that the artillery was covering a supply drop. Junkers transport planes had tried to land on a makeshift strip west of Klin. Some made it, some did not. But enough got through to bring ammunition and medical supplies. The supplies never reached us. By the time they were unloaded and sorted, the Russians had advanced again, and the supply dump was overrun. So we stayed hungry and cold and low on ammunition. Nothing changed. I remember very little of the 11th. It was just another day of existing, of trying not to freeze, of trying not to get killed, of watching the sky turn from grey to black and back to grey again. Somewhere during that day I stopped being afraid, not brave, just empty. The fear had burned itself out and left nothing behind. Otto talked about München sometimes, about the bakery he had owned, how he would make pretzels in the morning before dawn, and the whole shop would smell of yeast and salt. How customers would line up outside waiting for the doors to open. Simple things, normal things, things from a world that no longer existed. I told him about my father's farm, about the wheat fields in summer, about how the wind would move through the grain and make it look like water, about harvest time when everyone from the village would come help, and afterward there would be beer and dancing. Otto said that sounded nice. I said it was. It had been nice. I wondered if the farm still existed, if my father was still alive. I had not heard from him in 6 months. We talked to keep ourselves human, to remember that we had been something other than this, other than frozen scarecrows huddled in ruins waiting to die. 13th of December. The order came at dawn. We were breaking out. Tonight, south toward Necrocino. The plan was simple. A Kampfgruppe would attack north as a feint, draw Russian forces that direction. Meanwhile, the main body would assault south, punch through the encirclement, and make for Necrocino, where the rest of the division would be waiting. After that, it was every man for himself. Simple, except nothing was simple when you were surrounded by 3 Russian armies in 40 degrees below zero, with no food and almost no ammunition. We spent the day preparing. What preparation meant at this point, I could not say. We checked our equipment. We cleaned our rifles as best we could with frozen oil. We waited. Dieter briefed us at noon. Our Kampfgruppe would be part of the main assault, not the feint. We would move out at 2200 hours. Full equipment. Wounded who could walk would come with us. Wounded who could not walk would stay with a volunteer medical party. No one said what would happen to the ones who stayed. We all knew. Otto asked if we would have tank support. Dieter said yes. What tanks were still running? Maybe 10, maybe 15. The cold had killed most of them. Engines frozen solid, transmissions seized, tracks frozen to the ground. But some still ran, and those would lead the assault. After the briefing, I found a quiet corner and wrote a letter to my father. I had no paper, so I wrote it in my head. I told him I was sorry I had not written sooner. I told him about the cold and the fighting and the men I had met. I told him Otto made good bread. I told him I missed the farm. I told him I loved him. Then I erased the letter from my head because carrying it there made it too heavy. The afternoon was endless. Time crawled. Every minute felt like an hour. I tried to sleep, but sleep would not come. I sat with my back against a wall and watched the light fade, and thought about nothing. Thinking was dangerous. If you thought too much, you realized how insane this all was, how we were all going to die in this frozen hell for no reason anyone could articulate. So you did not think, you just existed, one breath after another. At 2100 hours, we formed up, 200 men in ragged lines. More appeared from other positions, 400, 600. By the time we were ready, there were maybe 1,000 of us. Not all First Panzer Division, men from other units, stragglers, walking wounded, anyone who could hold a rifle and walk. The tanks arrived just before 2200. I counted 8, Panzer IIIs and a single Panzer IV. They looked like ghosts in the darkness, white camouflage, frozen exhaust trailing behind them like shrouds. Their engines sounded wrong, rough and labored, but they were running, and that was what mattered. At exactly 2200, the feint attack began. We heard it even though we could not see it. Artillery and machine guns and the distinctive sound of German tank guns. The noise rolled across the town like thunder. The Russians would be moving reserves north to counter it. That was the idea anyway. We waited 5 minutes, 10. Then Dieter gave the signal and we moved. The first 200 meters were easy. The snow was deep, but we had made paths earlier in the day. We moved in columns, following the tanks. The tanks broke trail, and we followed in their wake. No one spoke. The only sounds were our breathing, and the crunch of snow, and the growl of the engines ahead. Then we hit the Russian lines. The darkness exploded, muzzle flashes everywhere, machine guns opening up from positions we had not known were there. Mortars falling, men screaming. The Russians had been waiting for us. They had known we would try to break out, and they had prepared positions to stop us. The lead tank fired. The gun flash lit up the night like lightning. I saw Russian infantry running. I saw buildings. I saw snow fountaining up where shells hit. Then darkness again. The image burned into my eyes. I could still see it even when there was nothing to see. We charged. I do not remember deciding to charge. One moment I was walking and the next I was running, screaming, firing my rifle into the darkness. Otto was beside me, others around me. We were a wave of men crashing into the Russian line, and the noise was indescribable. Every gun firing at once, explosions, screams, the ring of metal on metal. A shape rose up in front of me. I fired without aiming. The shape went down. I worked the bolt, fired again, another shape. The rifle clicked empty. I had no more ammunition. I reversed the rifle and swung it like a club. The stock hit something, and the shock ran up my arms. I swung again and again. Then I was through, beyond the Russian line, in open ground, others with me. We kept running. Behind us the firing continued, but we were out of it. For now, we ran south, toward Necrasino, toward safety, toward something other than this. I do not know how long we ran. Time had no meaning. We just ran until we could not run anymore, and then we walked. The cold was agony, but we ignored it. Fear drove us. Fear of being caught. Fear of being surrounded again. Fear of dying in the snow. Dawn found us 10 kilometers south of Klin. There were maybe 50 of us left from our Kampfgruppe. The rest were dead or scattered. Otto was not with me. I did not remember losing him. Somewhere in the darkness, he had vanished. I hoped he had made it. I hoped he was with another group, but I knew the truth. I had seen him go down. I just had not admitted it to myself until now. We found the road to Necrasino and followed it west. The division was supposed to be there. Command was supposed to be there. But when we arrived, there was nothing. Just more ruins and more snow. The division had pulled back farther. We would have to keep walking, so we walked. 15th of December. On the 15th of December, 1941, I sat in a bunker near a village whose name I never learned and ate potato soup from a canteen that was not mine. The soup was thin and cold, but it was the first hot food I had eaten in 9 days. I could feel it going down. I could feel warmth spreading through my chest. It was the most wonderful sensation I had ever experienced. There were 12 of us in the bunker, survivors from a dozen different units. We had found each other on the road and moved together because alone you died. Together you might live. That was the calculation. No one spoke about Klin. What was there to say? We had been surrounded, we had fought, we had broken out, thousands had not. We had. That was all. My shoulder still hurt. The medic had looked at it again and said there was nothing to do. Rest it, do not use it. Impossible advice. But the pain had become background noise now. Just another thing to ignore. Like the hunger and the cold and the fear. Someone had a cigarette. One cigarette among 12 men. We passed it around and each man took a drag. When it came to me, I held the smoke in my lungs as long as I could. The nicotine hit my bloodstream and for a moment everything felt okay. Just for a moment. Outside the bunker it was snowing again. It had not stopped snowing in a week. The whole world was white now. White and grey and black. No other colors, no green, no blue. Just winter colors, death colors. I thought about Otto, about his bakery in München, about the pretzels he would make before dawn, about how he had eaten raw horse meat and not complained, about how he had been beside me one moment and gone the next. I thought about Helmut and his eyes going empty. I thought about the men in the church and the cellar and all the positions we had held and abandoned. I thought about all of them, and then I stopped thinking because it was too much. Someone asked me where I was from. I told them, a farm in Thuringia, wheat and barley. Good land. They nodded. One man was from Dresden, another from a village in Bavaria, a third from Köln. We were all from somewhere else, somewhere warm, somewhere that was not here. The soup was gone. The cigarette was gone. We sat in silence and listened to the wind outside. After a while, someone started to snore, then another. I tried to sleep, but I could not. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the darkness exploding, muzzle flashes, men falling, snow stained red. So I sat awake and watched the candle burn down and thought about nothing. Tomorrow we would move again. West, always west, away from the Russians, away from Moscow, away from everything we had tried to accomplish and failed. But that was tomorrow. Tonight I was warm and fed and alive. For tonight that was enough.